They dragged him out of his own house, barefoot, half-dressed, and handcuffed, while his little girl screamed for help. "Daddy didn't do anything," she cried, but the cops kept laughing. To them, he was just another fat black man who didn't belong in their perfect neighborhood. They slammed him to the ground, pressing a knee on his neck, until his wife whispered through tears, "Please, he's a veteran." The officer smirked. "A veteran of what?" That's when the man lifted his eyes, calm, cold, and deadly. "Delta Force." The street fell silent. The real fight had begun. Before we dive in, make sure you hit like and subscribe because stories like this deserve to be heard. The morning after the arrest, the yard still smelled of wet grass and spilled coffee. The cuffs had bruised his wrists, but Marcus Reed didn't care. What haunted him were the eyes of his daughter, wide, trembling, watching her hero crushed in front of her. Just hours earlier, life had been simple. A family breakfast, Angela humming gospel songs, and Naomi practicing her dance routine in the living room. Marcus had promised he'd take them for ice cream after unpacking the last of the boxes. It was supposed to be a new beginning, a safer neighborhood, better schools, quiet streets. But in small towns like Fairview Heights, quiet only lasted until the wrong kind of family moved in. It started with glances, neighbors pausing, whispering. Then came the lost mail, the accidental trash on their lawn, the HOA complaints about their car in the driveway. Marcus tried to ignore it. "Stay calm, Reed. You're retired now." He'd fought overseas, he didn't want another battlefield here. Then last night, it turned into war. They said there'd been a call, suspicious man with a gun. But when 6 squad cars surrounded his house, Marcus had been holding nothing but a TV remote. They ordered him out, guns drawn, shouting commands he couldn't even follow fast enough. He tried explaining, his voice calm, trained. "I'm the homeowner. My wife and daughter are inside. Get on the ground." He hesitated, and that was enough. One officer shoved him face first into his own driveway. Angela ran out screaming. Naomi tried to pull her back. The sound of the cuffs locking still echoed in Marcus's ears. Now, standing in the same driveway at sunrise, he stared at the cracks in the pavement. Drops of his blood filled them like scars. Angela came out, her hands shaking around a cup of coffee. "You should have let them take you," she whispered. "You can't fight the system." He took the cup gently, his voice low. "I'm not fighting the system. I'm fighting evil." Inside, Naomi sat curled up on the couch, still wearing last night's pajamas. Her teddy bear was in her lap, its fur stained with dirt from the chaos. When Marcus knelt beside her, she didn't look up. "Why do they hate us, Daddy?" That question hit harder than any bullet. He brushed her hair back and said softly, "Because they don't know who we are. But they will." He stood, looked out the window, and saw a police cruiser parked across the street, engine idling, watching. Marcus's jaw tightened. He had served his country in silence for 20 years, missions that never made the news, names that never got remembered. But he'd sworn to protect innocent lives. And today, that mission was starting again, right here, in his own front yard. He reached for his old duffel bag in the closet, the one marked Delta. And for the first time since retirement, Marcus Reed prepared for war. Inside the duffel bag lay the ghosts of another life, his old fatigues, his field knife, and a folded flag with a bloodstained corner. Each piece reminded Marcus of the men he'd lost, the missions that never existed, and the oath that never expired: protect the innocent, no matter where the fight is. Angela's voice broke through the silence. "Marcus, please tell me you're not doing what I think you're doing." He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the badge number written on the incident report, Sergeant Hollis. The same man who pressed a knee on his neck while Naomi cried. "They came for us once," Marcus said quietly. "They'll come again. But next time, I won't be on my knees." Outside, the cruiser across the street hadn't moved for hours. Its windows were tinted, but Marcus could feel the eyes inside, watching, waiting. At noon, a black SUV pulled up. A man in a suit stepped out, smooth, smiling, fake polite. Mr. Reed, he called, I'm with the Homeowners Association. We just wanted to resolve this misunderstanding. Marcus stepped onto the porch, his shadow cutting across the man's polished shoes. You sent cops to my house, Marcus said evenly. That's not a misunderstanding. The man's smile didn't fade. Sir, there were complaints. About your presence. Noise, appearance, let's say, the neighborhood's comfort. Angela appeared behind Marcus, holding Naomi close. Comfort, she snapped. You broke our door down. The man's eyes flicked past her, then back to Marcus. You're a strong man, Mr. Reed. But strong men don't last long when they pick fights with the wrong people. That was it, the mask slipping, threat exposed. Marcus took a slow step forward. You should leave before you find out how long this strong man lasts. The man's smile cracked. He turned, muttering into his radio, We'll escalate. Bring in Hollis. As the SUV drove off, Angela whispered, Marcus, what are you going to do? He looked out toward the street, where the cruiser still waited. What I was trained to do, he said. Defend my family, and make sure they never touch another one again. The air grew still. Birds stopped singing. And as the hum of engines returned in the distance, Marcus knew the second invasion had already begun. The sun was setting when they came back. 3 cruisers. 1 unmarked SUV. 6 officers in tactical gear. And at the front, Sergeant Hollis, that same smirk glued to his face. Marcus was sitting on his porch, calm as stone. He had changed out of his t-shirt into his old black combat jacket, no rank, no insignia, just shadow and silence. The kind of silence soldiers wore before the storm. Angela peeked through the window, whispering, Marcus, please. Naomi scared. He nodded once. So are they. Hollis stepped forward, one hand resting on his holster. Well, he said loudly, his voice carrying down the quiet street. Mr. Reed, got a complaint again. Neighbors say you threatened an HOA official. Marcus didn't move. He threatened my family. I asked him to leave. That's not what he said, Hollis grinned. Says you assaulted him. So, we're gonna take you in again. He motioned to his men. 2 officers advanced up the steps. Marcus's voice dropped an octave, deep, steady, deadly. You touch that door again, Sergeant, and you'll remember my name for the rest of your life. Hollis laughed. Oh yeah? And who the hell are you supposed to be? The first officer grabbed Marcus's arm, and that's when the comm broke. In a flash, Marcus pivoted. One strike disarmed the man, another sent him sprawling down the steps. The second officer drew his taser, Marcus deflected it with the porch railing and twisted his wrist until the weapon clattered to the ground. Gasps erupted from watching neighbors. Phones went up, recording. Hollis shouted, Stand down, Reed. Marcus's voice was thunder. I did stand down. For 20 years. But not tonight. He pulled a small card from his jacket, his military ID, edges frayed but still sharp. Commander Marcus Reed. Delta Force. Retired, he said. You remember the oath, Sergeant? Protect and serve? You broke it. I didn't. For a moment, nobody moved. Even the wind held its breath. Then, with a faint hum of distant sirens, the rest of the town began to wake, drawn by the scene unfolding live across every phone screen. And as Marcus turned to face them all, battered, unbowed, and unafraid, the world finally saw not a suspect, but a soldier standing his ground. By morning, the videos had gone viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments, some cheering him on, others calling him a thug. Every news station replayed the same 30 seconds, Marcus Reed disarming officers on his porch. They never showed the part before that, the threats, the abuse, the fear. Just the fight. Angela watched the headlines roll across the TV. Former soldier attacks police. Neighborhood terrorized by ex-military resident. Delta Force Commander goes rogue. She turned off the screen, shaking. They're turning you into the villain. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, silent, staring at the incident report. That's how the game works, he muttered. They can't beat the truth, so they rewrite it. Outside, patrol cars passed every few hours, slow, deliberate, a reminder. Neighbors avoided their eyes. Even Naomi's school sent an email asking them to consider homeschooling temporarily. Late that afternoon, a black government SUV stopped at the curb again. This time, it wasn't the HOA man, it was two plainclothes detectives. One white, one black. The black detective removed his hat and sighed. Mr. Reed, you've got the whole department in flames. Hollis filed an assault report. You could be facing prison. Marcus looked him dead in the eye. And what about the assault he filed on my family? Or the death threats on our porch? The detective shifted, uncomfortable. Off the record? You're not wrong. But you're fighting a system that protects its own. Angela stepped forward. So what do we do? Wait for them to kill him? The detective hesitated, then slid a card across the table. Clarissa James, he said quietly. Civil rights lawyer. She's the only one who might help you. But be careful, they're watching everything now. When he left, Marcus turned the card over in his hands. Clarissa James, he repeated, the name echoing like a lifeline. That night, as rain lashed against the windows, he sat by Naomi's bed, watching her sleep. Her little hand clutched his finger, innocent and trusting. He whispered, they think they can bury us with lies. But I've buried better men for less. Angela came up behind him, resting her hand on his shoulder. Promise me this won't end in blood, Marcus. He didn't answer. Because deep down, he knew blood was the only language this town seemed to understand. Clarissa James arrived 2 days later, calm voice, sharp eyes, a woman who had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. She carried a slim black folder and the weight of generations on her shoulders. Marcus met her in the living room, where the blinds stayed half-closed now. I've seen what they're doing to you, she said, setting the folder down. But this didn't start with Sergeant Hollis. It started long before you ever moved here. Angela crossed her arms. You mean the racism? Clarissa nodded. And the land itself. She opened the folder. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings, black and white photos, and an old map marked Fairview Heights, 1963. There used to be a church here, Clarissa said softly. The Holy Trinity Baptist Church. A black congregation. They owned this land, all of it, until one night, it burned. Marcus leaned forward, scanning the photos. Charred wood. A preacher's Bible half melted. Women crying in smoke. Clarissa continued, the official report said accidental fire. But witness accounts said otherwise, white men in police uniforms, shotguns, gas cans. No arrests. The sheriff back then? Hollis's grandfather. Angela's voice broke. Oh my God. Clarissa nodded. Every black family who tried to rebuild here was pushed out. Sometimes by law. Sometimes by force. And now? You bought the one house built over that church foundation. Marcus's jaw tightened. So when they look at me, they don't see a homeowner. They see a reminder. Exactly, Clarissa said. You're living on ground they've been trying to erase for 60 years. Silence filled the room, heavy, sacred. Even the ticking clock seemed to hesitate. Clarissa closed the folder. You could move, start over somewhere else. But if you stay, I can help you fight. Legally. Publicly. We expose what they've hidden, we take their lies apart piece by piece. Marcus looked at the old photo again, the preacher's burned Bible, the congregation smiling before it all turned to ash. He whispered, they died standing on this ground. I'm not leaving it. Clarissa gave a small, sad smile. Then, Mr. Reed, this fight isn't just yours anymore. It's theirs too. The night before the court hearing, the rain returned, hard and relentless, drumming on the roof like gunfire. Inside, the house was dark except for one lamp on the table. Clarissa's documents were spread across it: land deeds, police reports, photographs of that burned-down church. Marcus stood at the window, watching headlights circle the block again and again. The same SUV. The same watchers. "They're not waiting for morning," he said quietly. Angela was already packing a bag for Naomi. "We can leave, just for the night." He shook his head. "If I run now, I prove them right." At 1 a.m., the power went out. The house plunged into blackness. Then, the crash of glass. Smoke. Footsteps. Naomi screamed. Marcus moved fast, not as a father this time, but as the soldier he had buried inside himself. He rolled through the hallway, grabbed the tactical flashlight from his duffel, and aimed the beam straight into the intruder's eyes. Two masked men, not cops, not neighbors. Mercenaries. Paid ghosts. Delta Force, one hissed, realizing too late who he'd been set after. The fight was brutal, fast, and silent. Marcus countered, disarmed, and dropped them both before the second one could reach for his gun. He didn't kill them, just enough to make sure they'd never come back. Angela dialed Clarissa. "They came for us, again." Clarissa's voice crackled through the line. "Stay put. I called a reporter. You want the truth out? Tonight's your chance." Minutes later, as patrol cars arrived, the real ones, Marcus stepped out onto the porch, rain soaking through his jacket, camera lights blinding his eyes. Clarissa stood beside a local journalist, live streaming everything. Marcus held up the deed in one hand, his military ID in the other. "This ground belonged to people who prayed here before any of you were born," he shouted over the thunder. "You burned their church. You tried to bury their story. And tonight, you tried to bury mine." The crowd of neighbors gathered, faces pale in the lightning flash. "I fought wars overseas," Marcus continued, "but the real enemy was waiting at home, dressed like law, hiding behind fear. That ends tonight." Behind him, Angela held Naomi close, tears mixing with the rain. For a moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, neighbors stepped forward, holding phones, streaming live, witnesses this time. Hollis's cruiser pulled up last, but now it was him facing the cameras, his smirk gone. Marcus lowered his voice. "Justice isn't what you say, Sergeant. It's what you do when the whole world's watching." And this time, the world was. The courtroom was packed. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters whispered as Marcus Reed took the stand, not as a defendant, but as a hero who refused to be silenced. Clarissa moved with calm precision, her voice steady as she projected decades of buried truth. One by one, she laid out the evidence: the missing videos recovered from anonymous backups, old city records linking the police to land seizures, and testimonies from the descendants of the burned church's victims. Sergeant Hollis sat stone-faced at the defense table, his career already crumbling under the weight of what they'd uncovered. When Marcus spoke, his words cut through the silence like a blade. "I didn't fight for medals," he said quietly. "I fought for my family. For a home. For the right to stand on my own land without a gun in my face." His gaze found Angela and Naomi in the front row, their hands intertwined, unbroken. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Not guilty on all counts. The words echoed through the courtroom like a victory drum. Angela covered her face, crying with relief. Clarissa grinned for the first time in weeks. Marcus just sat still, breathing deeply, letting the weight of months lift from his shoulders. Outside, cameras flashed as they stepped onto the courthouse steps. Reporters shouted questions, but Marcus simply held up the deed once more, the same paper Hollis had crumpled on their front lawn. "This is more than land," he said. "This is history. And history deserves truth." News of the trial spread fast. Within days, the FBI announced a full investigation into the department. Hollis and several officers were suspended pending federal charges. The mayor called it a reckoning long overdue. Weeks later, the neighborhood looked different. The people who once turned away now waved when the Reeds passed by. Some even helped rebuild the porch, the same one shattered by violence but now glowing under new paint and sunlight. Naomi's laughter filled the yard as she swung from the brand-new swing set Marcus had finally built. Angela sat on the steps with lemonade, her lip healed, her smile bright. Marcus stood quietly beside her, eyes on the horizon. They had fought their war, not with bullets, but with truth. And this time, truth had won.